May the Firth is coming. No, I do not mean May the 4th, although may the Force be with you, Star Wars nerds. I am one of your number, but that's not what I'm focusing on this year. I mean May the Firth, the first day of May in which we celebrate Colin Firth as Mr. Darcy, because everyone knows he's the only one who actually counts. In honor of May the Firth, I shall be instructing you on how to create a Regency dress, or for a very plain Bridgerton character. For my dress, I have purchased about 2.5 yards of a very subtly printed white cotton. I don't know if you can see it. There we go.
It's got leaves on it. It's pretty.
The amount of fabric you're going to need for this project obviously just depends on your body and how long you want it to be and whether or not you want to add a bustle in the back and be some sort of weirdo. So, this is 2.5 yards. Let's get started. Alright, now your next step is going to be to measure from your shoulder to right where you want the bodice to hit. So for Regency dresses, that is just below the bust. And make sure to add a couple of inches, if not just, just about half an inch or so, just to allot for seam allowance. And I'm wishing I'd used a darker marker here because you could really see what's going on. But anyway, measure around your bust from armpit to armpit. So that's just going to give you the side seam measurement. So make sure that fits comfortably and then divide the measurement in half and put it on the fabric. So I made the mistake of putting this measurement a little higher up. You really should put this at the same point that you put your length measurement. So yeah, don't do what I did. Just kind of not the point of a tutorial, but just don't do what I did. Now measure from your shoulder, again allotting for some seam allowance, to where you want your neckline to be, and then put that up at the top on the fold. Sorry, you can't even see anything on this. Bother. Okay, well anyway. You're smart, you'll figure it out. Next, measure how wide you want your neckline to be. I made mine way too wide, and I'm wishing I had made the shoulder straps a little bit wider, but I fixed that later. So now you're just going to connect your lines up to the point where you're going to put in the armpits hole. So you just kind of, you got to do that. It's awkward. There's no two buts about it. It might look like a really extreme measurement, but just go for it, because in the end you're going to be grateful you did, and this is flat, and once you put it on yourself it's not going to be flat, So what I did here is I kind of made it flare out at the top. Don't do that. That was a stupid idea. I ended up with these little shoulder wing thingies. Don't do that. Just go straight up and then trace out your neckline. Again, I made my neckline too wide. This is why we do mock-ups. So you're going to want to try it on and make sure it fits, but you should kind of have this sort of general shape. But, like I said, I made my neckline too wide and I wanted the straps to be a little bit wider, so I fixed that later. The power has just gone out, and so now I'm so in the dark, and if it's too dark, then I will need to get a candle out, but I don't really care. Where are the scissors? I want the scissors more. Ah! So here's the rule of thumb when it comes to sewing bodices. You always want your seam to be in the back, unless of course it is a blouse or something in which you want buttons in the front. But in general, you should have the seam in the back. So, when you're working with a pattern or something, this is the one thing that I made a huge mistake on originally when I just first started sewing, is that I forgot to trace the front of the pattern on the folded edge. And here I'm doing the back, and so it doesn't really matter. I can pretty much just do it anywhere. This is not the finished product, by the way. Do not freak out. I definitely made the straps too narrow, so I've just marked it here, and it's not even frame. Marked it here and here so that I can fix that on the final pattern. And then here are the two back pieces. And now I did a stupid. Obviously I fixed the strap size. I did a very stupid, and I forgot to lower the neckline. Raise it. So essentially what needs to be done with this is that it needs to go up here. So, because you want it to be higher in the back, lower in the front. Yeah. Don't do what I did. Essentially, you need to end up with this general shape, but the back this portion should all be closed in, and I hope that makes sense. It'll make sense in the final product. So that's a little better. Okay. Again, make sure you're tracing this in the fold. The thing about Regency bodices is that they were very, very straight. You know, they were pretty much straight all the way around, although I do seem to remember Carolina Zabrowska did have this one bit where she was talking about the Emma costumes, and she said that they were a little too straight, like, you know, just like perfectly round. But for the sake of simplicity, I'm just gonna go ahead and make mine very, very straight because it's just easier to work with. So if you are wanting to line this, you could use your mock-up as the lining, which I think I have done before. But, oh, do not forget to add seam allowance. This is, oh my gosh, why am I filming like this? This is so stupid. Don't forget the seam allowance. I usually add like maybe half an inch to mine. Just because it is so much easier to trim fabric off rather than add it on later. So there we go. And before I proceed any further, I'm going to test this and see how it fits. And obviously there will be some changes. We'll get to that later. But I am pretty happy with that. Okay. And then the back is pretty much same process. I am left with this shape. Now I'm going to clear all this out of the way so you can see it better. In doing so, I will cause wreckage to my entire room. But this is the back. And this is the front. Okay, and obviously, you know, I added some seam allowance so everything doesn't match up perfectly, but that is what you should have. Et voila. Cut right down. This is the other thing where it's handy if you're cutting on the fold, because then you have a natural line to go along. This feels too tutorial-ish. This isn't fun. Cue the baby goats. I just realized I'm so stupid. If the power's out, then I can't use my sewing machine, and wait. So, long story short, the sewing machine kind of did work, but unfortunately the drive band was busted, so I had to improvise, and then I threaded it incorrectly, and I couldn't figure out how to rethread it, and I couldn't look it up because the Wi-Fi was down because the electricity was out, and so, at any rate, this didn't really go well, so yeah, don't be like me. Just be patient. Power's back on. So next you're going to want to measure for how long you want this to be. So just take your remaining fabric and lay it out doubled up around your waist right where the bodice is going to hit, and just kind of get a general idea of where you want it to hit at your ankles, and then just mark it with a pin, fold the whole thing in half, and then in half again, and just generally make it small enough to be easily workable, and then you can just cut through that, and yeah. Then you're going to want to set your stitch length to the longest, and sew along the top of it without back stitching because you want to gather this. So yeah, then you just select one of the threads and pull on it really hard. Not really hard, be gentle. And yeah, that should gather up your fabric.
And now, because I have challenged myself to speak in an English accent, no matter how horrible it is, for the remainder of the video, I shall show you this next step, which is to match up the gathered skirt to the bodice, pin them together, wrong sides together, remember that, like so, and dash them through the dastardly teeth of the sewing machine until they are smashed together. Now, when you get to pinning the darts, make sure to flatten the dart out, just squish it, sort of, and then pin it flat, because if you don't, then you'll end up with something weird going on, and we're going to press all this later, but we're not going to press it now, because I simply can't be bothered to take this all the way downstairs and get out the ironing board and the yarning and all that, so that's what you're going to do, just pin it flat. Oh, and also make sure that you've given yourself enough space that you can sew on this side of the thread. Trust me, that is important. This is a lot of fabric.
Now for a fit check, just kind of put it on, make sure it fits well. Like I said, I ended up with those weird little shoulder things that I ended up cutting off, but you want to make sure you've got enough overlap in the back that you can put in the buttons and the loops. So you gotta overlap the fabric slightly, and then I just marked with a pin on the side where I wanted the buttons to be. This is so much easier to do if you have someone who can help you out with it, but you know, if you're a solo sewist, then you gotta do this. And I apologize, I wish there was another reason. Yeah, I just poked myself in the back there. I wish there was another way to do it, but there probably is. But yeah, just for a comfortable fit, this is kind of what you gotta do. And then I realized that I had sewn the bodice all weird, so I had to rip out the entire skirt and start over. But yeah, hopefully you just matched everything up well and didn't do that, because yeah, that was not good. Here's a terrible way of me showing you. You just, yeah. Oh, make sure you pin it together at the bottom and then try to get out of it to make sure you gave yourself enough room to get out. If necessary, you can leave a little bit of a gap in the skirt under the buttons. Yeah, there you go. So now you got to put the buttons on. I put mine on every 2 inches on the back. If you want to, you could put them a little closer together. I wouldn't recommend putting them any further apart than just 2 inches though, because otherwise you start to get weird gaps and it just looks funny. So yeah, don't do that. I just marked where I wanted them and it said buttons on. Now for the button loops. This is interesting, so pay attention. So you put 2 dots on either side of the opposite fabric where the button loop is going to go, and then you're going to grab your needle and some doubled up thread and go up through the bottom hole. And then you're going to create a loop. I used my finger for this part, so you just kind of wind it around your finger, and then go down through the top hole, and make sure that those threads are even, trust me, because if they're not, you're going to hate everything. Then make sure that the loop can fit comfortably around the button, because this is important. You want to make sure it's snug, but not too snug. So adjust as necessary, and then hold on to that loop really tightly so it doesn't move, and pull it off. And next you're going to create 2 more loops exactly the same way on top of that one, so you'll end up with a total of 3 loops, or a total of 6 strands of thread in the end. And then you're going to kind of blanket stitch around it. Now if you've never blanket stitched before, essentially you're just going around the edge of fabric, or in this case through a loop, creating little knots. So unfortunately I didn't get a super good shot of this, so I'll just try to explain it as well as I can. But you're going to go through the loop with the needle. This is not what's happening right now. And then you go through that loop again. So I hope that doesn't make any sense. Go up through the bottom hole again, go through the loop with your needle after making sure all the thread is nice and even. So go through the loop, and then go through the loop that you've just created with your needle. And you're going to do that a zillion times to make a bunch of tiny little knots. So this is what it looks like in the end. You gotta make sure they're really, really close together, otherwise it's going to look funky. And then just go back down through the bottom and tie it off. So yeah, hopefully that made sense to you.
Okay, so it's officially like day 3 of working on this project, and I really need to get this done today because today is a Thursday and I need to go to a Bible study tonight, and then I have to work all day tomorrow, and then I'm going to a friend's house on Saturday, and so I need to try to finish the dress and edit the video and upload it all before Saturday. And so I really want to get this out before May 1st because that's like the point of this. Anyway, I'm this close to losing it. Okay, so very briefly I'm just going to show you how to measure for your sleeves, and ignore the light behind me, that's just my halo, sorry, can't always turn that off. So you just want to measure comfortably around your arm, if possible try to match it up with the sleeve hole that you already got going on. And so for me that's about 19 inches, giving a little bit of extra room, and then I'm just going to add a few more inches to that. I'm going to make it 23 inches because I want the sleeves to bunch up a little bit at the top. So yes, this seems obnoxiously wide for a sleeve, but just trust me on this. So lock that in your head, and then very awkwardly measure the length of your arm. Make sure you bend your arm for this because you need to make sure it's going to fit you comfortably with your arm bent. So 24 inches. So it's going to be 23 by 24, pretty much almost square, which is a little bit weird. But like I said, I want it to have a little bit of give and be a little bit poofy at the top. Without poof, there is no life to anything. Simply ask a souffle. If it is not poofy, then it is dead. Therefore, I will now show you what shape to trace onto your fabric. So, it's like this. So you want it to be arched on the top and have some little flatter bits on the either side, maybe like, you know, about an inch or so. So that is going to be your biggest measurement from that's point A, that'll be point B, point A to point B. And then obviously you want to taper down a little bit more to the wrist. I'm making this really huge right now, but you know, you can always trim it up later, and that's typically the rule that I like to go for, is make things way bigger than necessary, and then you can always trim it down later. So, there. Oy vey. Oh my goodness, I completely forgot that I was supposed to be speaking in an English accent this entire time, so I shall make up for it. Now, you shall whisk your sleeve over to the sewing machine and place it slap down underneath the needle and sew vigorously about the edges using your largest stitch, and do not backstitch. You're going to be gathering the sleeves right now, gathering the sleeves. So, there we go. Does not need to be very pretty, you're just gathering things right now. I am well aware that this is probably the worst accent you have ever heard. When did my thread break? Pooh. Right, turn your dress inside out, okay? And then take your gathered sleeve. So the right side should be on the inside, the wrong side should be on the outside. So now you're going to take the right side of your sleeve and you're going to pin it to the inside. No. Right side to right side. Because you want the seam to be on the inside of the dress, and there's a lot of sides to this, and I'm really getting a little bit confused. I'm so exceedingly stressed out. So yeah, just pin it. I like to pin it on either side. I'm not sure why I suddenly became Australian right then. I like to pin it on either side. Just pin it together, make sure there's enough overlap that you can sew the seam shut. Just dig it all in. And then just fit the sleeve to the size of the armhole, and make sure the gathers are more at the top than on the bottom, because that's going to give it a nice poof. And then just pin away and then sew it in place, and do that on either side of the dress, because you want two sleeves. Otherwise, I mean, I suppose you could go for a Pride and Prejudice and Zombies look, you know, when you've got one sleeve ripped off, you could splash it with all sorts of fake blood and stuff like that, but show a little decorum.
Okay, now for a fit check. So you're going to want to put it on inside out and make sure that everything fits properly, and make sure that, you know, everything fits well and you can move around in it and you don't feel like you're being constricted. Then put it on inside out, and now you're going to fix up the sleeves. So somehow my sleeves ended up being really, really huge. I'm not entirely certain how that happened, but you know, it's better to have more fabric than to have less. So just adjust the sleeve so that it fits you, and then you're going to pin along the bottom of it so that it's comfortable. And I wish there was an easier way to do this, but there's not. It's just kind of uncomfy unless you want to measure your arm and do all sorts of math, and ain't nobody got time for that. So yeah, or you could just leave the sleeves entirely unsewn and have those weird like shoulder cape thingies, which I guess is some kind of cool avant-garde Met Gala look if you want, but I highly doubt anyone watching this channel is going to be going to the Met Gala, so yeah, just pin your sleeves. So in the end, this dress turned out really, really nice, and I'm super glad that I made it. I think I'm going to add a little bit more to it later, but you know, I really wanted to get this video out in time. So if you end up making it, make sure to tell me in the comments, and then tag me on Instagram at @thehistorybounder. And yeah, while you're at it, give me a follow, because that'd be cool. Yeah. Anyway, like, share, and subscribe!